The wind howled through the trees like a distant cry for help. Snow clung to every branch, falling in soft waves that muffled the sound of pain and panic. Officer Travis Walker, 42, lay on the frozen ground, barely conscious. His Navy uniform was soaked with blood around his left shoulder, the crimson stains spreading against the white snow like a warning sign. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. Every second that passed pulled him closer to the edge. Beside him, his K-9 partner, Dakota, a loyal German shepherd, stood rigid. His paws trembled slightly from the cold, but his eyes never left Travis. Dakota was trained for search and rescue, narcotics, even aggression when needed, but no part of his training had prepared him for this. He nudged Travis's cheek gently, then looked around, ears twitching. There was no one, no sirens, just snow and silence. From the woods, two small figures appeared. Emily and Sophie Brooks, 9-year-old twins, stumbled through the trees with urgency in their step. Both wore green parkas and pink scarves, their blonde braids swinging as they ran. Emily reached the officer first and dropped to her knees. "Mister, can you hear me?" she asked, panic in her voice. Her gloved hand hovered over his radio, unsure what to press. Sophie stood frozen, wide-eyed, as Dakota turned toward them, letting out a low, pleading whine. "He's still breathing," Sophie finally said, kneeling beside her sister. "But he doesn't look good." Her voice shook, but her hands were steady as she touched the officer's arm. The radio crackled on Travis's chest. Static, maybe a distant voice, but neither of the girls understood how to respond. Emily looked up at Dakota, who stared right back. For a moment, it felt like he was begging her to do something. Sophie took a step back and looked toward the woods. "The road's not far," she said. "Mom's phone worked there last week. If we run fast, we can call someone." Emily hesitated, glancing down at Travis, then at Dakota. The dog was pacing now, anxious but still protective. With a deep breath, Emily gently stroked his fur. "Stay with him. We're going to get help. I swear." The girls turned and ran, their small boots crunching in the snow as they disappeared into the trees. Dakota laid down beside Travis again, pressing his body close, his breath fogging the air. Then he lifted his head to the sky and let out a long, heart-wrenching howl that echoed through the woods, half warning, half prayer. The cold bit into their cheeks as Emily and Sophie Brooks sprinted through the forest path. Their legs were short, but adrenaline made them fast. Branches scraped against their jackets, and snow spilled into their boots with every step. Emily's heart pounded, not just from running, but from fear that they might not make it in time. Sophie said nothing, her breath visible in quick clouds, her eyes locked on the trail ahead. They were just kids, but today they were running for someone's life. They finally reached the clearing near the old road, the place their mom always said had just enough bars to make a call. Sophie fumbled with the phone, her hands trembling. Emily hovered close, watching the screen. 1 bar, then 2. A shaky signal, but it was there. Sophie quickly dialed 911, her voice trembling as she spoke. "There's a police officer. He's hurt really bad. He's near the creek, by the Northwoods Trail. Please hurry." The dispatcher's voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "Stay where you are, girls. Help is on the way. Are you safe?" Sophie nodded, even though they couldn't see her. "Yes, but he's not. He's bleeding and there's a dog with him. He's really smart. He didn't leave him." The weight of what they'd witnessed finally settled in her chest, and her eyes welled up. Emily put an arm around her sister's shoulders. Back near the creek, Dakota hadn't moved. He remained pressed against Officer Travis Walker's side, sharing his body heat, occasionally nudging his face. Travis's eyelids fluttered, his lips moved, but no words came. His breathing was still shallow, but it hadn't stopped. Yet, Dakota's instincts told him something had changed. He stood up, alert, ears perked. In the distance, he heard a sound. Faint, tires crunching on snow. Voices. A few minutes later, headlights cut through the trees, followed by the wail of a siren. Emergency responders rushed out of a county vehicle, kneeling beside the officer while gently moving Dakota back. The dog resisted at first, growling low until one of the EMTs calmly knelt and extended a hand. "It's okay, boy. We're here. We're going to take care of him." Dakota stepped aside, reluctantly, but didn't go far. Meanwhile, the twins watched from the clearing, tears freezing on their cheeks. A woman in a thick paramedic coat approached them. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "You might have saved his life." But Emily didn't smile. She looked back toward the forest and whispered, "He's not alone." His dog never left him. The flashing red and blue lights painted the snowy woods in waves of color. Travis Walker was barely conscious as the paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher. His body was cold, but not yet beyond saving. Dakota paced beside them, whining low, his eyes never leaving his partner. One of the medics gently placed a hand on Dakota's neck, whispering, "He's going to need you when he wakes up." The dog didn't flinch, he simply followed, like he always had. Inside the ambulance, oxygen hissed and machines beeped steadily. Travis's breathing was shallow, his pulse irregular. As the vehicle sped toward the hospital in Carson Ridge, a small rural town in northern Nevada, fragments of memory began to flicker through his mind, uninvited and jagged like broken glass. He saw her face, Claire, his late wife, her laughter, her hands on the steering wheel. The moment everything changed, a flash of light, screams, then silence. Back at the Brooks home, Sierra Brooks was pacing. She had just gotten off her shift as a night nurse when she received the call. The dispatcher told her what happened, that her daughters had found a downed officer near the trail. Her heart dropped. When she heard his name, Travis Walker, she froze. It had been almost a decade since they'd spoken. The history between them was complicated and unresolved. She grabbed her coat and keys, her hands trembling as she left for the hospital. At Carson Ridge Memorial, nurses rushed Travis into surgery. One of the ER doctors, Dr. Elaine Morrison, recognized him immediately. "That's Walker," she said, alarmed. "Get trauma room 3 prepped now." She'd treated him before, years ago after the accident. She'd seen what grief had done to him then. And now, looking at his bloodied body, she wasn't sure if it was the wound on his shoulder, or the one he'd carried for years, that would finally take him down. In the waiting room, Dakota lay quietly near the sliding glass doors, refusing to leave. The receptionist had tried to move him once, but he growled. A low, defensive sound that said, "Don't try again." People passed by, some pausing to stare, others whispering about the dog who wouldn't leave his handler's side. The bond was visible, undeniable, and heartbreaking. Meanwhile, Sierra arrived and spotted the girls sitting on a bench with blankets around their shoulders. She hugged them tightly, overwhelmed by both relief and fear. Then she saw Dakota, and for the first time in nearly 10 years, she whispered the name of the man she thought she'd never see again, Travis. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and quiet worry. Sierra Brooks sat beside her daughters, but her eyes were fixed on the glass doors at the end of the hall. Dakota hadn't moved. He lay with his head resting on his paws, staring at the double doors where Travis Walker had disappeared hours ago. The silence between them all was heavy, full of questions too fragile to ask aloud. Emily clung to her mother's side while Sophie sat quietly, watching Dakota as if she understood exactly how he felt. A nurse finally emerged from the trauma wing. "He's stable," she said softly. "Lost a lot of blood, but he pulled through surgery. He's in recovery now, still unconscious." Sierra exhaled slowly. Relief mingled with unease in her chest. She wanted to cry, but didn't. Not yet. Not here. The nurse turned to her with a curious glance. "You're on his emergency contact list," she added. "Are you family?" Sierra hesitated, eyes wide. "I was once," she thought, but instead, she just nodded. "Yes, I am." Dakota was allowed to remain by Travis's room. Hospital policy didn't technically allow it, but after one look at the dog's refusal to leave the entrance, no one argued. Sierra stood outside the glass window to the ICU room. Travis looked smaller than she remembered, paler, older. The lines on his face had deepened, and even through the tubes and wires, there was something in his expression that looked broken. Not from the injury, but from everything that came before. As the girls napped in the waiting area, Sierra walked slowly into the room. The monitor beeped steadily, each sound tapping against memories she'd tried to bury. She stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, heart pounding. "You never came back," she whispered. "After Claire died, you just disappeared." Her voice trembled with something between anger and grief. "You weren't the only one who lost her." She took a seat beside the bed and looked at Dakota, who lay curled in the corner, watching silently. "I used to wonder if you blamed me," she continued, more to herself than to Travis. "We were all in that car. I was driving, and Claire..." She tried to stop the argument. "But you never called. Not once." Her voice broke at the end, the weight of guilt and years of silence collapsing in her chest. And then, without warning, Travis stirred. His eyes opened just slightly, unfocused, but they found her. A flicker of recognition passed between them. His lips parted. One word came out. Raspy, weak. "Sierra?" Travis Walker struggled to speak, his throat dry, every word coming out in fragments. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the glow of machines and the soft blue cast of night through the blinds. Sierra Brooks leaned forward in her chair, her heart thudding as if it had been waiting years for that single moment. His voice sang her name again. "Yeah," she whispered. "It's me." Dakota lifted his head from the corner, watching his handler with alert eyes. Travis blinked slowly, trying to make sense of where he was. Pain flickered across his face, both physical and emotional. "The girls," he rasped. "They found me?" Sierra nodded. "Emily and Sophie. They were walking the trail. You owe them your life." His gaze shifted to the ceiling, and a silence hung between them, so thick it felt like the air itself had weight. "I remember the snow," he murmured, "and Dakota wouldn't leave." Sierra hesitated, unsure how much he could handle. But the questions that had haunted her for years pushed past her lips before she could stop them. "Why didn't you call me after the accident? After Claire died?" Her voice cracked, not from accusation, but from the ache of abandonment. "We all lost her, Travis, but you shut everyone out. Even me." He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. "Because I blamed myself," he said. "And I thought, maybe you did too." The truth lingered in the air like smoke. Travis turned his head slightly toward her, wincing at the movement. "I wasn't supposed to be driving that night. Claire asked me to, but I had too much to drink. I told her I was fine. You offered to drive instead. I insisted." Sierra's breath caught in her throat. She remembered that argument. She remembered the look Claire gave her in the rearview mirror, asking for peace. "You never told me that," Sierra said, her voice hollow. "I couldn't," Travis whispered. "It would have broken you. It broke me." His eyes glassed over, and a tear slipped down the side of his face. Dakota quietly stood and moved closer, placing his head gently on Travis's arm. The gesture said what words couldn't. Even after years of silence, the bond between them hadn't faded. Neither had the pain. Just then, the door opened slowly. Chief Walter Hensley stepped inside, his face tight with concern. He nodded at Sierra, then looked at Travis. "You need to know something," he said. "This wasn't an accident. The shooting in the woods. Someone knew you'd be there." The room fell into silence again. But this time, it wasn't about grief. It was about danger. Chief Walter Hensley stood near the hospital bed, his heavy frame casting a shadow over the quiet room. His face, usually composed and stern, now carried something else. Concern, mixed with something deeper. Fear. "The call that brought you to the woods," he said slowly, eyes locked on Travis, "was fake. There was no missing hiker. Dispatch confirmed it. Someone lured you out there." Travis Walker blinked hard, trying to sit up, but his body still wouldn't obey. Sierra placed a hand gently on his arm, as if to anchor him. He turned his face toward the chief. "You think someone wanted me dead?" His voice was still hoarse, but steady now. Chief Hensley nodded once. "Not just you. Whoever did this knew your route, your habits. This wasn't random, Travis. It was planned." Dakota stirred at the foot of the bed, his ears twitching. His instincts were sharp. He could feel the shift in the room's energy. Sierra watched the dog, her heart beginning to race. "Do you think it has something to do with Claire?" she asked suddenly. The name hit the air like a slap. Travis looked down, visibly shaken. "I don't know. Maybe. There were things about her death I never told anyone." Walter stepped closer. "You told me she died in the crash, that it was an accident. But there were rumors about a fight you had before the trip, about threats. Someone in town said Claire was planning to leave you." Travis's eyes narrowed. "That's not true." But the tension in his voice betrayed uncertainty. She was struggling, yes, but she wasn't leaving. She was scared of something else. Sierra leaned in. "Scared of what, Travis?" He hesitated, his mind pulling pieces together. Memories that hadn't made sense until now. "There was someone," he finally said. "A man she kept bumping into. At the diner. At the grocery store. She thought it was coincidence. But one night, she told me he showed up near our cabin in Ely." Travis paused, his voice falling to a whisper. "She thought he was following her." The room fell silent. What had once seemed like a tragic accident was beginning to look like something far more sinister. Chief Hensley folded his arms. "You need to rest, but we're reopening Claire's case, and we'll look into this attack like attempted murder." Dakota stood, alert now, sensing the shift. Travis stared at the ceiling, a deep dread setting in. What if Claire's death wasn't just a mistake, but the beginning of something bigger? 3 days had passed since the shooting, but Travis Walker hadn't slept a full night. The hospital room felt both too quiet and too loud. Every beep of the monitor, every footstep in the hallway made his heart race. Dakota hadn't left his side. The dog now rested near the window, eyes open, body tense, like he was waiting for something no one else could see. Sierra had stayed too, taking turns with the girls to be there, though neither she nor Travis had dared talk more about that night. Not yet. That morning, Chief Hensley returned, this time with a manila folder in hand and a face like stone. "We found something," he said, placing the file on the tray beside the bed. Travis's fingers shook slightly as he opened it. Inside were printed documents, reports yellowed by time, and at the top, Claire Walker Incident Follow-Up, 2015. His breath caught. "I never saw this before," he muttered. Walter nodded. "Because it was sealed, filed as a non-criminal vehicle fatality. But it shouldn't have been." The report detailed statements Claire made weeks before the accident. She'd gone to the sheriff's office twice, both times speaking in vague terms, saying she felt followed, watched, and that someone had been leaving strange things on their porch. No suspects were named, and her claims were dismissed as stress-related. Travis clenched his jaw. "She didn't tell me everything. I thought it was just anxiety. After losing the baby." Sierra flinched at that. It was the first time he'd spoken those words out loud in years. Claire had miscarried a year before her death. She had never fully recovered emotionally, and Travis had drowned in guilt instead of grief. The tension between them grew after that. Fights, silence, regret. But now, looking at these files, Travis realized something chilling. Maybe Claire's fear hadn't been in her head. Maybe she had been right all along. "Who was the officer on duty who took her statements?" Travis asked. Walter hesitated. "It was Deputy Rick Marston." The name hit hard. Marston was still on the force. Quiet, sharp, always watching but never saying much. Travis remembered Claire mentioning him once. Something about how he always showed up at the diner when she was there. His stomach turned. Sierra stepped forward. "If he's still working here, and if he knew Claire came to the station..." Her voice trailed off. Travis's mind was already racing ahead. The fake 911 call. The setup in the woods. the shot aimed at his chest. It was too coordinated to be random. And if Marston was behind it all, what else had he been hiding all these years? That night, Travis Walker sat upright for the first time since the shooting. His shoulder throbbed, but the pain was no longer just physical. It was memory, betrayal, and guilt, all mixing together like a storm that had been waiting years to break. Sierra Brooks sat across from him, legs crossed, eyes unblinking. The manila folder with Claire's old report lay open on the hospital table between them. "You're thinking what I'm thinking," she said. Travis nodded slowly. Rick Marston. He was always close. Too close. Travis's mind reeled with images from the past. Too many moments that hadn't seemed strange at the time. Rick showing up at the diner when Claire worked her shift. Him offering to walk her to her car. Even the awkward tension when Travis once found him standing near their home, claiming to be checking on a noise complaint. It had all been dismissed as coincidence. Now it felt like a trail they had ignored for too long. Sierra leaned in. "If he's the one who made the fake call, if he shot you, then he's not just unstable. He's dangerous, and he's still out there." Travis nodded, his jaw tight. "And he's still wearing a badge." That thought made both of them shiver. Dakota, still curled near the bed, suddenly sat up, ears alert. There was a sound in the hallway, nothing obvious, but sharp enough to shift the energy in the room. Travis and Sierra looked at each other. Silence fell like a warning. A soft knock came at the door. Then it opened. A young nurse peeked in, but her face was pale. "There's an officer here," she said. "He said he's on your team. Deputy Marston. Should I let him in?" Travis's chest tightened. Sierra stood quickly. "No," she said. "Tell security to stay nearby. Do not leave him alone with any patients. Especially not this one." The nurse nodded, startled, and left the room in a hurry. Travis grabbed the call button and buzzed for Chief Hensley. "It's him," he said when the chief arrived minutes later. "He's here. And he's not just visiting." Walter's eyes darkened. "I'll handle it, but if he knows we're onto him, he might get desperate." Sierra moved to the window, pulling the blinds to look out at the parking lot. "He already is desperate." Outside, in the distance, headlights flickered. A black pickup truck idled at the edge of the lot. The driver's silhouette was just visible, but he didn't get out. He just watched. And in that moment, Travis knew this wasn't over. It had only just begun. The hospital lights dimmed as the night grew colder outside. Inside room 214, Travis Walker sat rigid in his bed, staring at the empty hallway through the half-open door. The calm in the building was deceptive. Sierra stood near the window, arms crossed tightly, watching the dark pickup truck still parked at the edge of the lot. Dakota paced back and forth, ears pinned back, his instincts rising again like they had in the woods. "He's waiting," Travis said quietly. "He's watching to see what we do next." Chief Hensley returned with 2 deputies he trusted, placing them at each end of the hallway. "Marston's on shift tonight," he told Travis, "but we've pulled his patrol car. He's already asking questions, trying to act like he doesn't know what's happening. I don't trust him for a second." Travis clenched his jaw. "He's been hiding in plain sight for 10 years, and I was too blind to see it." Downstairs, the front desk received a call from inside the hospital, a voice claiming to be security, requesting a transfer of Travis to another room for safety. But it wasn't security. It was Marston. Minutes later, one of the elevators moved on its own. No nurse had pressed the button. No one was inside. The building's silence grew thick with tension. Sierra's skin prickled. "He's coming. I can feel it." Without warning, the power flickered. Just for a second, but long enough to silence the machines, dim the hallway, and raise every alarm inside Travis's chest. Dakota let out a low growl and positioned himself between Travis and the door. The hospital generator kicked in, restoring lights, but the air had already shifted. The safe bubble was gone. Footsteps echoed just beyond the room. Slow, deliberate. Sierra reached for the phone, dialing the front desk. No signal. The line was dead. Travis's pulse pounded in his ears. He reached toward the drawer near his bed, where Chief Hensley had quietly placed his service weapon earlier. "We end this tonight," he muttered. The doorknob turned. Dakota barked, sharp, loud, protective. The door opened slowly, revealing Deputy Rick Marston, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. But his hand rested on his hip, dangerously close to his holstered weapon. "Evening," he said, voice flat. "Heard you wanted to talk." Travis didn't move. Sierra stood frozen, and Dakota didn't blink. He stared into the man's eyes, like he'd known this moment was coming all along. For a long second, no one spoke, and then Marston stepped forward. "You should have left it buried, Travis." His voice had shifted, calm on the outside, but full of something dark underneath. The past had caught up, and now it was standing in the room with a badge and a loaded gun. The air inside the hospital room was razor-thin. Deputy Rick Marston stood just inside the doorway, one hand on his holster, the other gripping a clipboard like it was part of the act. But his eyes were wrong. Too calm, too cold. Travis Walker didn't flinch. His injured arm ached, but the weapon in the drawer rested within reach. Sierra stood at his side, unmoving, and Dakota was poised, ears up, growling low. Marston's voice was almost casual. "You know, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Claire wasn't supposed to die. She just wouldn't let it go." Travis narrowed his eyes. "She told me someone was following her. She thought it was all in her head. It was you, wasn't it?" Marston tilted his head. "She was smart, too smart, and too close, just like you." Then everything happened at once. Marston's hand twitched toward his sidearm, but Dakota lunged before the weapon cleared its holster. The dog slammed into him with full force, teeth bared, knocking him back into the wall. Travis grabbed the gun from the drawer, ignoring the scream of pain in his shoulder. "Get down!" he shouted to Sierra as the two men wrestled for control. Marston shoved Dakota off and raised his weapon, but it was too late. Travis fired. The shot echoed through the hall. Marston collapsed, his gun skidding across the floor. Security stormed the room seconds later, followed by Chief Hensley, who took one look and said nothing, just nodded. Sierra crouched beside Travis, shaking, tears finally falling. "It's over," she whispered. Dakota returned to Travis's side, blood on his muzzle, but his eyes clear and calm. He'd done his job. Again. Days later, the town of Carson Ridge quietly absorbed the shock. Deputy Rick Marston had been behind more than just the attack. His house revealed journals, photos, pieces of Claire's life she never knew had been stolen. The town mourned her again, but this time with truth. Travis stayed silent during most interviews, offering only one line. "She tried to warn us. I just wish I'd listened sooner." At home, Sierra watched as Travis walked slowly across her porch, Dakota trotting at his side. The girls had drawn chalk hearts on the sidewalk. Sophie handed Travis a photo they'd found of Claire. Laughing, alive, he took it with trembling hands. "She'd be proud of you," Sierra said gently. Travis looked out toward the sunset. "I just hope I can be proud of me someday too." Dakota lay down beside him, finally at peace. And for the first time in 10 years, so was Travis.